Morning, everybody that are joining online this morning. And for those of you that may be at the parish, we'll just give it another couple more minutes for people to sign on, and then we will get started. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock, so I think we should get started. Welcome if you're joining at the parish or if you're joining via the Zoom webinar thing, welcome. And my name is Maggie Keenan. I am the Director of Planned Giving for the Catholic Community Foundation of the Diocese of Richmond, and will be the presenter today for the seminar. But I would like to begin with our bicentennial prayer. Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father of lights, the radiance of your Son has guided the advance of the gospel across our Diocese of Richmond for 2 centuries, strengthening our church from the Eastern Shore to the Cumberland Gap. Grant that the nearness of your Son may dispel the darkness of our sins, so that as our love increases more and more, we may dare more than ever to fearlessly proclaim the word. Holding fast to the word of life, may we shine like stars in the world. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. So thank you again. The seminar that I'm going to be presenting today is called Just Getting Your Affairs in Order, the 4 things that your family will thank you for. And I promise you that that title is very deliberate. It has changed over the past couple of years, but I think finally we've landed on something that has captured your interest for one reason or another. And why? And let me hold on just 1 second, please. Let me do a screen share. It said that it paused, right? There we go. Okay, we're good. There we go. Okay, so typically when we talk about getting our affairs in order, it really is the subject that most of us do not want to face. We don't want to have it with our loved ones or our spouse, because ideally it means we're facing our own mortality. And how can that be? I have many more years to live, right? The reality is that we don't know that. And so each day is definitely a gift, and every breath is a gift. So we just stay in the present moment and count our blessings. The process of really getting your affairs in order doesn't need to necessarily be so daunting. It really can be a very grace-filled activity. And I say that when we approach getting our affairs in order from our Catholic faith, from the values and the beliefs that we hold, and what it means to be a Catholic, and what it means to then bring that to the table and to the conversation to be a full expression of really who we are and how we want to leave this world and how we want our legacy to be remembered, okay? So if we kind of take that as the lens and the perspective about having those conversations, it really changes the tune altogether. So there are reasons to get your affairs in order. Here are just a few for your consideration. I personally think that the last one is probably the most important. It really is about reducing the hardship for your loved ones when they are grieving you, or if you are grieving a loved one that you've lost, and you're having to make really difficult decisions in a very difficult time, because that grief process can be so overwhelming, and each of us deal with that differently. Another good reason to get your affairs in order, if you will, is really it's the way of expressing and letting others know what your intentions are about who the assets that you have get passed on to whom you want, when you want, and the way you want. And one of the examples I use is, when you go out to a restaurant and the waiter comes and they hand you the menu. Well, maybe not these days, but okay, pre-COVID when we used to go to restaurants, and the waiter would hand you the menu, and I guarantee you that no one has ever said to a waiter or waitress, "Oh, no, you just go on, pick for me, and if it's a steak, it doesn't matter to me if it's rare or well done, or you just pick it for me," right? No. You select the items that you want and how you want your steak or whatever it is to be well done or rare or medium, whatever it is. So when we're really talking about getting our affairs in order, it's the same thing. You get to express what you want and the way that your intentions are fully to be lived out. So who needs to really get their affairs in order? I used to call this slide or what have you, getting your estate plan in place. And I was presenting this seminar to a group of parishioners at St. Elizabeth here in Richmond. And a couple came up to me after the seminar and said, well, Maggie, this was great information, but we don't need an estate plan because we don't really have a lot. And I stopped and I thought, geez, wow, that people, we don't know what we don't know, right? So I kind of removed or extracted that terminology from my seminars because it just really struck me about the education and information that really needs to be put in place. So we just keep the language very simple. It's about getting your affairs in order. And everybody needs to put their affairs in order, no matter their age. I mean, we talk about millennials, their future's like Friday night, but still, if they're in their 20s and they're working and, they have a car and they have a few bank accounts, maybe you own property. For many of us on the seminar today, we have retirement plans, we have stock, we have stuff. So you want to be able to organize all of that in a way that reflects your values and who you are and how you want that to pass on. I guarantee you that if you do not have your affairs in order, meaning if you do not have a will in place, the state of Virginia is happy to make those decisions for you, and they will. Whether you have a surviving spouse or not, they will make the decisions around that for you. Typically in the state of Virginia, it is predetermined that the spouse will get 1/3, and if you have children, they get the remaining 2/3. Again, the state makes those decisions for your stuff, and there is no provision in state law that says that anything needs to go to a charitable organization. And that includes our parish, our Catholic schools, our Catholic parishes, and our ministries. There's absolutely no provision. And whether you were faithful to your parish or let's say, the SPCA or your alma mater, doesn't mean that anything that they are a beneficiary. So here's a list of the documents that really do need to be put in place in some type of file somewhere. Wherever it is, please promise me that it will not be in this manila folder, that will be in the file cabinet in the back bedroom on the second floor in the bottom drawer in the back where nobody can find it. Okay, so people need to know where your file is at all times, even when you update it. So your last will and testament is a document that needs to be in this file, or if you have a trust, we'll talk about that. Your beneficiary forms. Beneficiary forms are relevant for your life insurance policies, for your pension plans, retirement plans. And I often say with respect to beneficiary forms, particularly retirement plans, that whoever your administrator was and wherever you were employed and retired from, you had to complete a beneficiary form. And so you had to name somebody that has to be done. So if you're sitting here today and you're like, I don't remember who that was, you may want to reach out to your administrator and see who you originally put down. Maybe the person has passed away, maybe circumstances have changed. So it's something you may want to look into. And your Catholic advanced medical directives as well. If you do not have one in place, certainly the materials that have been provided for you from me to Lisa, she has that living on the Church of the Ascension's website. So that's another document that needs to be put in place. A durable do not resuscitate order, that's the DDNR. That's different than a DNR. And I get this all the time, that most people don't know about a DDNR. So the difference, a DNR is when you are admitted to a hospital, you are presented with a DNR form. That is only effective while you're in the hospital. And then once you are discharged, it expires. It's no longer valid. A DDNR is what you put in place with your physician. And basically it states that if you choose that in a case of emergency at your home or wherever you are really, if you do not want to be resuscitated, you want this form slapped somewhere on the refrigerator or in plain view. Because if a loved one or you have to call EMS to come to your home and they do not see in plain view, and that's critical, the word is plain view, your DNR, they are mandated to resuscitate you. Even if you say, I signed a form, I don't want to be resuscitated, they have to see the form. So some people, they wear the wrist bracelets or they wear something around their neck, or they keep a card in with their driver's license. So that's another important document. I added organ donation form because when I was doing this seminar at Sacred Heart Church in Danville, I actually had a couple that asked me a question about the Catholic's views on organ donation, and I hadn't really included it. So I'm always learning something along the way. An organ donation form, this is something that you would, well, the DMV is the main contact for the organization that is donatelifevirginia.org. Okay, so if you have that on your driver's license, DMV then sends that donor, your registry information to that organization. But that is also something that you want to keep in your file as well. And then lastly, your Catholic funeral mass plan. You've been provided through today's presentation, the Foundation's Catholic Funeral Mass, your planning guide. And believe me, it's about 32 pages. Just great information. And I'm going to talk about that. But these are the documents that you really do want to have in place. So who are the people that you need to have in place? One of them is a financial power of attorney. And this individual is someone that is going to manage your finances when you are no longer capable of doing that for yourself. So this individual is someone that you want to trust implicitly to make those decisions around your finances and then manage your finances, right? So we've talked about, goodness gracious, at parishes these days with COVID-19 about the online giving, right? So if you have things already automated through your own bank account, and you're giving through your bank account, you know, however that is for you to your parish, if it's automated, it really kind of simplifies the process for this particular individual. The other person that you want to have in place is a healthcare power of attorney. Now, they can be the same person. They do not have to be the same person. That's completely up to you. I encourage that maybe you would not want to have the person that would be responsible for making the decision of pulling the plug as the same individual that would be responsible for your finances. I'm just saying. Anyway. This individual, whoever you select, the most important thing you can do for them is forgive them in advance. Really forgive them in advance and let them know this for having to make some of the most difficult decisions that they will ever have to make in their life for you. This is an individual that you grant permission to speak with your healthcare team, your doctors, your physicians, around your care when you are incapacitated or at the end of life as well. And note that the end of life can be anywhere from 6 months to 2 weeks. So that's typically hospice will be called in 6 months in advance of really what could be considered towards the end of your life. That's kind of the time frame. So this individual will make those decisions when you no longer can. And a word on that is when you no longer can't. Well, like, what does that mean? It means that your physician and another physician have done the assessment and evaluation and have declared that you are incapacitated and can no longer make decisions for yourself. So there is a process and a procedure for that. So there's a lot of different people, right? A lot of terminology being delivered here today. So a power of attorney, be it financial power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney, there's two types for each of them. One is what we call a durable power of attorney. And this kicks in place as soon as that individual signs on the line and says yes to you, that they're willing to be that individual for you. The other type is what's called a springing power of attorney. And it basically is what it says, it springs into effect when you are no longer able to make decisions for yourself, you're declared incapacitated. So they're the two different types. Your set of circumstances that should be discussed with your loved one, your spouse, and also probably your attorney as well. But they're the two different types, and I want to make that clear. Most people don't know that there's a thing that's called a springing power of attorney. I mean, I personally have a springing power. Mine are springing, and they'll take effect when I no longer can take care of myself in that respect. So if you go back and you think about that laundry list of everything I said you need to have in your file, one of them is your last will and testament. In the state of Virginia, recognizes what we call a holographic will, which basically means it could be like chicken scratch on a legal pad and you signed it with a big fat X, right? Still legitimate, not legitimate in other states. So if you were to relocate and you did a holographic will here in the state of Virginia, may not be valid in another state. So just something to think about, especially if you were to relocate and go live with adult children in your later years. So testate and intestate. Testate means, that's the legal law language, means you died with a will in place. Intestate is the word that applies if you die without a will in place. And I'll tell you that during, I would say since March, when all of the crazy of 2020 is kicked into place, people have really been thinking about getting their affairs in order. I actually presented this seminar to Prince of Peace Catholic Church in Chesapeake in early February actually. And a parishioner there, she contacted me in, I want to say late April, early May. She attended, shared with me her experience from the seminar, and just everything with COVID. She and her husband were sitting down at the kitchen table to really start getting their affairs in order. I promise you, this is something you really want to do like now, if you don't already. And if your will predates 2010, it's really out of date. So, and that it's with respect to state laws that changed regarding healthcare power of attorneys and healthcare advanced medical directives. So you'll want to revisit your will. Actually, every 2 years is kind of recommended. However, so with your will in place, what I promise you don't want to hear is when you're sitting in the doctor's office with your spouse and the doctor, the physician looks at the both of you and your spouse and says, go home and get your affairs in order. I always say that no good decision comes out of a crisis. That was my own personal experience with my spouse, my husband. So doing this in advance, really kind of when that time should come or if it would come, is things are in place. So what your last will and testament does is it is a way for you to express and direct how your assets will be distributed across your family, your friends, your faith community, charitable organizations. It's all of your assets. And another person that needs to be put in place is what we call the executor. And the executor is the individual that represents your, they are the ones that are to carry out your desires with probate, right? The court process upon your death. So their role only kicks into place when you pass away, and their job ends when the last piece or assets of your estate have been distributed, okay? So this individual can be the same person as your financial power of attorney or your healthcare power of attorney, or you can have all three that are separate. That's a personal choice, but this individual you want to make sure is someone that is true, that knows you well, and really will hold it in their heart to carry out your intentions as your last will and testament dictates. Because let me tell you, family can get crazy. Okay, and it only takes one person to throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. And do understand that just because you have a will in place does not mean that you bypass the probate process. So that's key. You do not bypass probate. So the reasons for really putting your will into place, minimizing family stress for one, right? Protecting your assets from creditors, and actually avoiding time and cost of probate. Costs are minimal, but it really helps the court work with your executor in an efficient manner. It also protects your beneficiaries. So a word on beneficiaries is that, I remember I mentioned earlier that you want to have those beneficiary forms, life insurance, retirement accounts. Beneficiary forms trump your will. In other words, the insurance company does not have to wait through to go through probate. So that check can already be cut and sent to the named beneficiary while everything else is going through probate. So your beneficiary forms are really key. And as we are discussing a very, hard subject, right? Throwing a little something fun. This is funny, actually. When I put this slide up and I'm presenting in front of a live audience, in front of parishioners, if I was there at Church of the Ascension this morning, most of the time people chuckle at this. It says, this group of individuals, they were like very saddened when they learned that their wealthy grandfather died in an earthquake, but then they were devastated when they learned that he wrote his will on an Etch-a-Sketch, right? So I promise you, if I was delivering this slide or presentation in front of a group of millennials, your 20 and 30-some-year-olds, I wouldn't get the same little chuckle, because I guarantee you they don't even know what Etch-a-Sketch is. So anyway, I hope you're laughing. I missed the chuckle. Okay. So what is probate? Probate is a court supervised process, and that is a good thing, because their role in working with your executor is to really ensure that your assets go to those named individuals, organizations, your parish, your faith community. That is their role. So it's not a bad thing. It's just a very timely thing for the executor. It can actually take anywhere from a couple of months up to several years. I've seen it go up to 4 years, actually. And one example I have is there was a woman, a daughter. She was the executor of her father's estate, and he named the diocese as a beneficiary. So Susan was coming to the office over at least a 2-year period, at least 8 times, to bring me different forms that I had to sign, that she had to take back to the courts. And she had to come on her lunch hour because she was working. So it just is really stressful. And if you're really thinking about from the time that your loved one passes and they're buried, that this whole process of carrying out probate, just the grief process it's just another part of it and prolongs it. It's another reason to get your will in place. Here are the pros and cons. Typically, as I said, it's a court supervised process. The costs are modest. They're not terribly, thousands of dollars. The cons are everything is a public record. Certainly in our local newspapers in the legal section is where this information would live. It can be time consuming, as I said, and I mentioned, it's just stressful. It's just stressful for your family, especially if you've ever experienced just going through the process when it hasn't been very seemingly and smooth, right? Not a happy place. There are a few ways to avoid probate. The biggest thing is trust, is by putting your assets into a trust, right? So we talk about trust if you think of everything in a box. It's a legal document, but you want to put everything in a trust. That bypasses probate altogether. Beneficiaries also avoid probate. I mentioned that those beneficiary forms do trump probate. And of course, joint property ownership as well. So a lot of different people in the process here for you, as well as a lot of different terminology. We often hear the word living will, right? That is another word that would be used for an advanced medical directive. A living trust, that is not a last will and testament. So a living trust is also referred to as a revocable trust. And it names, you still benefit from your assets during your lifetime, and then the designated beneficiaries are put into place at the time that you pass away. This is something that you put in place with your attorney. Now, there are two different types of trusts, right? So, well, there's several, but the most common are revocable and irrevocable. And they just are as the words speak for themselves. Revocable would be an example. You and your spouse decide to put a living trust, revocable trust in place, which means that if one spouse should pass away and that later down the road, the other spouse happens to remarry, that trust can be revisited and things can be changed, right? So irrevocable is, it's one and done. So once you sign on those lines, that's it. It's irrevocable. Those assets and everything remains in place as is until the time of your death. But there are some reasons, depending on circumstances, to put assets into an irrevocable trust. And here again, it may be tax considerations that you would discuss with your attorney. Mm-hmm. The benefits of a trust, I mentioned a little earlier, they bypass probate altogether. Definitely, it reduces the burden on your trustee. Typically, that is people just assign their attorney as the trustee, the firm is the trustee. Not that they're benefiting from it, they're just the ones that need to carry out your intentions and desires as have been laid out in your trust, directs the distribution of your assets, everything, right? So when we think about everything we own, not just our cash assets, but also our stuff and things like my great aunt Mabel's fine china, which I happen to have. So it's everything. It's our collections. It's our things that we just have cherished over the years, right? Yeah, so they're there, and it protects your privacy. So this information, when you have a trust, it doesn't land in the legal notices of the of your newspaper. It protects your privacy. Okay, so when we think about putting all of our assets, getting them laid out, naming the beneficiaries, whoever they are, whatever the entities are, we really want to think about what is our legacy and how do we want that to be shared as a reflection of our faith. So I go back to really coming from a place of our Catholic heritage and recognizing that all source of all good and every blessing is from God, right? The gratitude for all gifts from God over our lifetime. And your legacy and the way your assets are distributed, if you will, really is a reflection to your family, your friends, and your faith community, just how important they have meant to you. So legacy gifts. This is another word for saying legacy gifts, everything you own. It's all of your stuff and things, it's your assets, right? Your life insurance policies, for example, beneficiary form. If you have had a life insurance policy and you can sit here today and not recall who you've named as the primary and or secondary beneficiary, you may want to contact the your policy company and revisit that and update it if need be. The same for your retirement plans. That I hear so often in the seminars when I'm doing them live. People, when I say, do you remember who you named as your beneficiary on your retirement plan? And most people are like, Typically, some of us put a beneficiary in place on these forms before we were ever married. Another good reason. As with respect to your last will and testament, you hear the word bequest. So a bequest is essentially how you've divided things, your assets by percentage wise. Typically, people do 10 to 20% to individuals, 75%. So it's typically a percentage of your estate. Because certainly we do not know the cash value of what our estate will be upon our passing. So if you own stock or mutual funds, do you have what's called a TOD in place? And that is called a transfer on death form. And if you don't, or you can't remember, you may want to get that in place, right? Two things to note here on this list is retirement plans and stock. If you have named a family member or an individual as a beneficiary of either of those two assets, there are taxes involved for them, right? And it can be burdensome to the extent. So when typically what most people do, particularly with stock, well, and or retirement plans, because I have an example that I'll share, they name a charitable organization, their alma mater. People do name their parish as the beneficiary of stock or retirement plans, because these entities are those 501c3s, right, that they do not pay taxes. Your bank account, and if you have a money market, regular checking or savings account at a regular bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, what have you. I don't know about y'all, but when I originally set up my first bank account, like, I don't know, I got out of college and I finally had a bank account. We didn't have debit cards back then. And the bank gave you like a sample checks to get started while you awaited the checks that were going to come in the box in the mail. At no time, at any time, even if I transferred from one bank to another, did a representative ever say to me or hand me what's called here a POD, a payable on death form. Not once in my lifetime has a bank representative ever handed me a POD. So you would want to go to your bank if you do not have one in place and put one in place. So if it's a joint account, obviously you name you don't need, you still should have I did get this question. If you have a joint bank account with a spouse, do you need a POD? And the answer is yes, you need a POD. Because what happens if, God forbid, you both are taking out in a tragic accident. And I remember the couple from New Hampshire. It was summer a year ago. They were traveling on vacation and they were in Corpus Christi, Texas, and they were both murdered and they were in their 50s. You need a POD. This particular person that you identify does not have access to your cash in your accounts now. That only kicks into place once you pass away. And the good reason you want to have this in place is because Dominion Energy and your local water company and any other regular bill, your mortgage, they're not stopping because you passed away. So it usually takes a month or two to kind of get things settled out, right, before those accounts are closed. So your financial power of attorney still needs to continue paying on your vehicle, your insurance, and things of that nature, in addition to the funeral parlor as well. And your real intangible property, that goes back to, if you have art collection, it goes back to your vehicle, it goes to your home, it goes to your boat. A word about that is, it would be advisable, well, I don't advise. So a suggestion would be to really have the estate or the trustee or sell your property and then have the cash, the net proceeds, distributed accordingly. A good example was Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Salem. This elder parishioner lady left her home to the parish, and Father Shuping was having to our pastors are not real estate agents. Okay. Truly, and actually St. Peter and Paul in Palmyra, the parishioner passed away last year. The niece is the executor, and she just notified the parish in early August that there was a lot of land that this parishioner was bequeathing to the parish. Now, it doesn't mean that the parish has to accept the gift. So certainly, as I said, and if it was, and the parish did accept it, so now they have to try a way to sell it. It's crazy. So just something to think about. I actually know of a pastor who was left a boat, and it was a very nice boat. Unfortunately, the family didn't leave him the truck to pull it so he could enjoy it. So enough said about boats. Don't leave the pastor the boat unless you're willing to let them have the truck to pull it as well, right? Charitable gift annuities. So if you have commercial annuities, I mentioned this parishioner that called me in the mid-spring, looking at 2 commercial gift annuities and leaving them to the parish, and how do you go about doing that? Charitable gift annuities are something that we offer at the foundation, excuse me. It's just that people don't name an individual to be the beneficiary. They name an entity of our diocese, and typically most people have named their parish as the beneficiary. So the bequest through your will, which I mentioned, you can see down here the example. You're leaving a legacy gift to your parish or the diocese or whatever, and people typically, I say, pick a percentage as opposed to a dollar amount, and the percentage doesn't hide. So I was giving this seminar at St. Michael's in Glen Allen, and it was after following the daily mass. So there were 2 women in front of me at the daily mass, and Father Brady made the announcement of, oh, please join us in the big parish. It was at the lake house for the seminar and what it was about. And one lady literally said to the other lady, "What's this seminar about?" So help me God. And the one lady said, "Oh, it's about leaving a chunk of your estate to St. Michael's." And I was like, no, it's not. It's just a little something, something. So anyway, you have that opportunity to divide your assets by percentage any way you want. So this is an example, and this is an example of 100% bequest. Ms. Davenport was a long-standing parishioner at St. Patrick's here in Richmond. She was a widow, and she left everything to St. Patrick's, everything. She was not heavily involved in parish life. She went to mass on Sundays, and that was it. People, Father knew her, people knew her, but she wasn't engaged in every aspect of parish life. So she left her home in Churchill, which was assessed at about between $70,000 or $75,000. She had over $600,000 in assets, in investments, I should say. The total amount of her estate was $820,000. Okay, that blew people away. And oddly enough, she left her 2 dogs. She left her 2 dogs to Father Rossi, who then found a home for them. And I kind of digress here for those of you that are pet lovers. If you have ever experienced 2 pets that were like really good buds for many, many, many years, and one passes away before the other, and if you've ever experienced the other surviving pet, the grief is very real. I personally, our little Effie and Hazel, when Hazel passed, Effie grieved for weeks and perfectly healthy, but just really died of grief. And the other thing about pets is when the owner passes away, it's like they just know that owner's not there. Like we can't say to them, oh, your owner passed away. So really think about your pets in your will. Truly think about your pets in your will. They are family, truly. So gifts of security and retirement plans, as I mentioned, here are, if you were to name them to an individual, obviously there would be either capital gains tax or other taxes involved with retirement plans. And again, you can here do it by whole or a certain percentage. Mr. Edgar Duffy, who was a parishioner at St. Benedict here in Richmond, and that's Deacon Paul Mahefke. He was the former city clerk for the city of Richmond. He, in his lifetime, was in this little investment group of gentlemen, really, a small group, and they just kind of invested in Brown-Forman. And if you know Brown-Forman, you know that they are, their brands are Lennox and Hartman Luggage, certainly the Jack Daniels and the Woodford Reserve bourbon lines, and other liquors as well. So Brown-Forman has continued to perform very well. And through his investment over the years, when he passed away, he left 4.5 million. And talk about a lasting gift of faith. So it was between St. Benedict and different organizations of the Diocese of Richmond. So if that is not a testament of his Catholic faith, and Ms. Davenport, everything is just something to think about. This is another great story. St. Michael's, I mentioned, and Father Dan Brady, when I was running this legacy program, which by the way, and I'm so sorry, I wouldn't need to digress. I apologize on behalf of Father Daniel and Lisa, who if you're at the parish there today. I was working with them and your stewardship committee this time last year on bringing the legacy program to Church of the Ascension. I'm so sorry I did not mention that at the beginning. So I do want to recognize Julie Brissett, Jonna and Ken Levins, Becky Makea, John Rooney. Truly, they were working with me on the legacy program that's now in place at your parish, and this was the educational aspect of it that we didn't get to do real life in April or May, or April actually, because of COVID-19. I just had to say that, people. Okay, so St. Michael was one of the first pilot parishes that worked with me on the legacy program through 2 years ago. In that time of working with their parish legacy committee, Miss Angela, who happened to be a Eucharistic minister at the parish, very involved and engaged in parish life. She'd been there from the beginning, which is about now 27 years, I believe. She was also an individual that relied on St. Michael's for financial assistance throughout her time. That March of 2018, actually, Father Dan received a check in the mail for $31,000. It was kind of like this windfall. Angela had passed away back in December of 17, and she left her entire retirement accounts to St. Michael. So talk about just a generous gift of her faith, a generous gift and an expression of her faith, because Father Dan knew her, people loved her, and it really just spoke volumes. And they shared her story with, they put it in the bulletin and they really shared the story. I mentioned commercial annuities. At the Catholic Foundation, we offer charitable gift annuities. The same concept. You donate cash, and then we sign the agreement. You are guaranteed quarterly payments for life. You guaranteed, that is a legally binding document, guaranteed by the foundation. And then upon your death, whatever the residual is, would go to the entity that you named as the beneficiary, right? So your returns, so for the money you put in, we are guaranteed to offer you a set percentage, a return. And those percentages or returns are based on not us. It's based on the American Council of Charitable Gift Annuity Associations. So they set them every July, and they range from the age of 65 to 90 plus. In that age range, anywhere from 6.1% all the way up to 9.1%. And depending on what your age is, depends on that guaranteed return, which I don't really know where you can get like even 7.1 or 8.1% today, right? So we have two really great stories. So Christi McGrath, she's living, she is a parishioner at St. Mark's down in Virginia Beach. She signed up. I worked with her to get the charitable gift annuity in place because she just wanted, recently retired and just was looking for, to supplement her income. And she asked me, do we have a music ministry at the diocese? And I was like, I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that. So I'm learning something all the time. Most people just name their parish. Well, music has been so important to her from her childhood, in her church life, all the way through to where she is today at St. Mark's, and still very involved in the music ministry there. So in fact, through our Office of Worship, we actually have a diocesan music ministry. So if you have a music director at your parish, there are opportunities for leadership and education through the music ministry of the diocese, which I thought was just so beautiful. And just truly an expression of who she is. So she's a flute player of all things. Mm-hmm. And this couple, if I could say anything about Bernard and Nancy Gearing, who were from Rocky Mount, Virginia, and they went to St. Francis of Assisi. I think they were married in the parish. Their kids were baptized in the parish, married in the church. So they've been there for a very long time. Their house was sat on the side of a mountain. And 3 years ago, actually, Mr. Gearing, Bud, contacted me because he was then 90, or he was 89 turning 90. So his return was 9.1%. And he wanted to ensure that when he passed away, that Nancy's income would not be cut in half. So we set it up, and he actually passed away April a year ago. So Nancy was then still continuing to receive the quarterly payments for her life. And Nancy just passed July the 1st of this 2020. So they obviously did not live out the charitable gift annuity to its payments were quarterly since 2017. So there was a lot of money still left in the annuity. And they named the social ministry at the parish as the beneficiary. So Father Lerma Carlos Lerma, who was recently assigned there, talk about a windfall gift of $46,000. Like, what parish social ministry couldn't use that, right? So when we talk about how you as a Catholic, how can you shape your legacy across your, I say the 3 F's, your family, your friends, and your faith community, and also your alma mater and charitable organizations. But certainly as an expression of who you are as a Catholic, I always say, listen, if your parish was not on that street corner like they were just non-existent, they weren't there anymore, like your parish just like went away, right? Most often I hear people say, gosh, my parish, the fellowship, they're like my second family. I don't know what I would do without them. So it's just something to really think about and come from that place when you're putting your affairs in order. And obviously, you know, to make light on a subject, Mr. John Doe arrives at the pearly gates and there's St. Peter saying, you can't take it with you. You can't take it with you, folks. Right here, rule number 6. Church of the Ascension, I will tell you that in working with the Legacy Committee, there are 9 individuals that have self-disclosed to the parish and pastor, Father Daniel, that they have made a provision in their will already for Church of the Ascension. So the parish is already named as a gift in their will. The type of gift and the amount is never disclosed. That's kept in strict confidence. But as a way of recognizing these individuals that are leaving a lasting gift of faith, your parish has a Lumen Christi Legacy Society chapter, as does St. Michael's, as does all the other parishes that work with me through this program. So you have 9 individuals that have stepped up and have made this known. And it's just a way for the parish to say thank you, to recognize the individuals, and hopefully inspire others to think the same and do the same. So here are your list of questions to consider. I go back to those individuals, those powers of attorney. Who are they? The executor, who are they? The assets that you have, who is going to get what and how much? Okay, are there any tax considerations that you need to think about when bequeathing something to an individual versus a charitable organization? And then ideally, you know, I didn't touch on this enough, but certainly you have the opportunity and you received the guide as a participant today, which is the Catholic Funeral Planning Guide that we created a year ago. And you get to plan your own funeral mass. That booklet I mentioned is 32 pages. It has other good information for family members that as well, but to know about where things are. But I always say, you know, when you put your will in place, when you put your advanced medical directives in place, these are the things, these are the gifts you give to your family, okay? When you plan your own funeral mass and you give a copy of that booklet once you go to the Father Dan or the parish office, right? That is the gift you give to yourself. It is the expression to your family and your friends at your funeral mass what your faith meant to you. And that is a beautiful gift, an expression of really who you are. And if you've ever have had to plan for a funeral around a loved one, the pastor comes to the house, your family, you're all sitting around in a circle, and then you're flipping through I've done this, flipping through the Bible. What verses, what scripture are we going to read? What songs shall we pick that best reflect, you know, Jim? That's challenging. And also it's challenging when people say, oh, I'm not that one. We need to pick this one. So make this the gift you give to yourself, actually. And so on that note, we still have plenty of time for questions that you can drop into the Q&A box or the chat feature as well. I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you for being here today. For those of you that have come out and are at the parish, thank you for being courageous and brave and coming out, right? So you can, if you're viewing from home, there's the little Q&A feature. You can click that and type in your questions. We have a couple. Oh, no questions from the conference room. Okay. What is the church's view on organ donation? So there is a document that was provided to you through this seminar that Lisa can make available, either hard copy, well, not hard copy these days. You can let Lisa know how you can access them on the parish's website, because I know that they're uploaded. Basically, if you're an organ donor, essentially, okay, I'm going to streamline it, and Father Daniel can chime in, that you, before your body goes to the mortuary, goes to the place where your body's going to, the organs are going to be donated. Your full body is in casket for your funeral mass. It is then after mass that your body is taken to the facility where the organ donation is going to happen. And then once that happens, then your body that is left has the interment. Okay, so that's the way it kind of, there's actually that couple in Sacred Heart in Danville, they were doing full body donation. They asked me what was I was like, I have no idea, but I do have a document on that's written of ethical and moral philosophy written by a priest on full body donation. But the rest of the information is available to you. How do we get the 32-page guide, Lisa, for the funeral guide? So you get the special for you today, right? The Catholic estate planning guide. You get our Catholic funeral planning guide. You get the advanced medical directive guide and form in the back, as well as a few other one-sheeters, good information, wills out of state, so on. Will this program be featured again on our parish website? And the answer is yes, it's being recorded. So Lisa will be putting that in the place wherever you all can view it again. Follow up, what if you are going to be cremated in full body? Okay, Catholic view on cremation. Full body mass, full body and casket at the mass. After the mass, your body is then sent to the mortuary to be cremated. And then your remains are then interred on sacred ground. Okay, let's see, we have any other questions here? So yes, if you are looking for materials, email Lisa. They are at www.ascensionvb.org. So that's your parish website. And then that /webinar. Okay. Any other questions that I'm missing? Anybody in the chat? Oh, chat feature. Let's see, chat. Oh, thank you. You're welcome, Roger. How I miss live people, but this is so like how. Thank you to our IT department, because certainly the ministry and the good works of the church still continue on regardless of how homebound some of us still are. I think that is all the questions that we have. Excellent questions. You have my contact information, certainly. And feel free to email me or call me at any time. I'm happy to support you through your process. So thank you again so much for being here today, everybody. And we are at 11 o'clock, right on the nose, right? 1 hour. Thank you so much. Stay safe, people. Continue to pray for everybody at your parish and for your pastor and your parish staff. I will tell you, many staff people at our parishes across the diocese are wearing multiple hats right now. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Father Daniel. Thank you to the Stewardship Committee. And thank you all for being here. Enjoy your weekend, y'all.